Roman parents waited 9 days to name a baby. Not tradition, they were waiting to see if it lived, and the thing that actually kept ancient kids alive wasn't medicine or luck or even mom, it was 14 other people. About 1 in 4 babies born into a forager groups died before their first birthday. Almost half were gone before they hit 15. That's not one rough village. That's the baseline for our whole species. And we're still here, so something clearly worked. By the end, I'll tell you who those 14 people are, why one of them is probably your grandmother, and which ancient trick actually worked. Because only one did. Hold my scroll, I need both my hands for this one. Start with the numbers because they're rough. Researchers pulled 20 studies of forager groups that hadn't been touched by modern food or medicine. Infant deaths, 26.8%. Deaths before puberty, 48.8%. Basically a coin flip on whether a kid grew up or not. Wait, back up. Those deaths weren't spread evenly across childhood, and that's the whole story here. Almost all the damage landed in one narrow window, year 1. Get a kid past 12 months and the odds flipped in your favor fast. So every culture on Earth built a wall around that first crucial year without ever comparing notes. The walls were, let's say, creative. Rome's wall was paperwork. A newborn wasn't a person yet. The father had to physically pick the baby up off the floor to accept it into the family. Then everybody waited 8 days for girls, 9 for boys. Only then did the kid get a name. Before that day, no name, no birthday, no legal existence. One Roman writer described a baby that new as more like a plant than an animal. Which is not cool, dude. It's also exactly how I'd describe myself before coffee, to be honest. Quick disclaimer, by the way, the last living thing that I was in charge of was a houseplant, and it made it 11 days, I believe. Maybe a little less, a little longer. Anyways, here's the part that gets me. That wasn't cruelty. That was a system. Rome had 9-day trial period on being a human, and every culture had its own version of it. Greece had a running ceremony, Egypt had gods on standby, and ancient Iraq had a full-on monster. Because if you don't know about germs, babies don't die of infections. They die of something that hates them. 4,000 years ago, mothers protected their babies by hiring a demon. In Mesopotamia, that something had a name. Lamashtu, who has donkey's teeth, bird feet, and a hobby of stealing nursing babies. Protecting babies from her was one of the most common worries in the entire culture. So how do you stop her? Option 1. Bribery. Mothers packed tiny boats with combs and pins and a little clay statue of the demon herself, then floated them downriver. Basically a gift basket with a note that said, "Please leave." Option 2, and this is the good one. You hire a bigger demon. Pazuzu was a monster who brought famine and storms and locusts, and mothers wore his face around their necks as a good luck charm. The thinking was that Lamashtu would take one look and go bother a different family. So the plan was to invite a second demon into the house, cause obviously. And before you laugh at ancient Iraq, Rome's medical advice was worse, and a doctor wrote it down actually. Pliny the Elder, the guy who wrote the closest thing Rome had to an encyclopedia, had a teething section. His advice? Tie a wolf's tooth around the baby's neck. It stops teething pain, and as a bonus, it stops the kid from getting startled. 2 problems, 1 wolf. Still fuzzy? Rub the gums with the brain of a hare. Not a metaphor, by the way. Go get a hare and use the brain. What are you still waiting for? Come on, get to work, buddy. That remedy stuck around in Europe until the 17th century. 1,600 years of parents looking at a screaming baby and thinking, you know what this needs? A rabbit. Now, some of this stuff was nonsense with extra steps, but one ancient baby invention was genuinely dangerous, and it's the one that looks the most like something from Target. Archaeologists keep finding tiny clay pots in Bronze Age graves, and in 2019 somebody finally scraped one out. So the archaeologists kept digging up these clay pots in Bronze Age Germany specifically, tiny, round, with a spout, and small enough to fit in a baby's hands. Some are shaped like animals with stubby legs. They are, and I mean this sincerely, adorable. In 2019, a team scraped the inside of a few and ran the residue, cow and goat milk. So these were baby bottles, roughly 3,000 years old, and they were sitting in children's graves. Now here's the problem. The spout is nearly impossible to clean. There's no pasteurizing, no boiling, no soap. You're pouring raw animal milk into a porous clay tube that you cannot get the inside of. It's a bottle and a petri dish at the same time. So the fancy solution was making things worse. The thing that actually worked has to be somewhere else. And it is. It's boring, it's free, and it's the reason your species exists. Milk, specifically human milk, for a long time. Most ancient kids nursed for 2 to 3 years, not 6 months. That's a clean water supply, an immune system delivery service, and a food source that can't spoil, all in one. If a mother couldn't feed, you found someone who could. Which is why one of the weirdest documentaries from the ancient world is a job contract. In Roman Egypt, wet nursing was a paid profession with terms in writing. There was 46 of these contracts on papyrus. One from 13 BC has the nurse promising to take care of herself and the child, not to ruin her milk, and not to nurse anyone else's baby on the side. A no-compete clause for breast milk. No side hustles, man. But feeding a baby for 3 years while also doing everything else is impossible for one person. And that's the actual answer. It always was. Humans didn't solve child survival with a remedy, we solved it with staffing. One adult was never enough. Ask my houseplant that's dead now, man. Look at the Efe in the Congo. An Efe baby gets passed around an average of 14 different people. By 18 weeks old, roughly 60% of the care that baby gets comes from someone who isn't the mother. Among the Hadza people in Tanzania, kids spent about a third of their first 4 years being held by somebody else. That's your 14. Aunts, sisters, cousins, older kids, and grandmothers. Scientists called it cooperative breeding, and among great apes, we're the only ones who do it. A chimp mother hands her baby to absolutely nobody. A human mother hands her to a teenager and goes to work. One member of that crowd is doing more work than everybody else. She's older, she's finished having her own kids, and evolution may have built her on purpose. The grandmother part is real. Records from pre-industrial Finland and Canada show that women who lived longer after 50 ended up with more grandchildren who survived. Menopause might exist partly because a woman who stops having babies and starts helping with everyone else's is worth more to the family. Your grandma isn't retired. She's load-bearing. Which brings up the uncomfortable part. If sharing the kids worked so well, why did child deaths get worse when we settled down? Because farming changed the math. Settled in one place and you get crowds, garbage, animals living 10 feet from your bed, and diseases that need a crowd to spread. Kids died more, but farming also meant mothers could have babies closer together, so more kids were born than lost. The population just went up anyway. Humans looked at a rising child death rate and solved it by having more kids, because obviously. So the strategy that saved us wasn't a cure, it was a crowd. Every generation before you kept its kids alive by refusing to let one exhausted adult do the whole job, and then we invented the suburbs and undid everything. I once watched a friend's 2-year-old for 90 minutes. 90. I needed a nap and a debrief. 14 people suddenly sounds less like a village and more like a minimum. So that's your answer. No secret herb, no lost remedy, no wolf tooth. The one trick that worked was other people. Ancient humans kept kids alive by making childcare everybody's problem and by feeding babies the one thing nobody could improve on. The demons and the hare brains were just what people did while they waited to find out if it worked. You held my scroll for the entire length of this video about clay bottles and a bird-footed demon, which I think says something great about you. Drop a like if you're never looking at your grandmother the same way again, and tell me in the comments which one you'd have actually tried. The wolf tooth, the demon necklace, or the hare. Be honest, I bought a new houseplant, by the way. It's day 4 right now. Pray for me. Subscribe because next time we're doing what ancient humans did at night, and it's somehow more chaotic than this. Until then, hold my scroll and pray for my plants.